Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is our Prophets of Awakening. It's our Israelite Advanced Bible Study night, Tuesday night, the 30th of August, 2022. Okay, we'll be dealing with, I'm going to read chapter 5 out of the book of First Kings. So I'm asking everybody to check out our videos. We have a lot of information. It's a lot of information given on the videos. Will connect dots for you, and they'll bring you into the truth of the scriptures. So I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to Prophets of Awakening, and hit the notification button. It would be greatly appreciated to subscribe if you like if you like the content. Shalom and welcome to Prophets of Awakening channel, and welcome to our Israelite Bible study. We're going to do our moment of silence and a prayer. We're going to do Psalms and some current events and some need to know information. And we open it up for a little Q&A, and then we'll go into the reading of scriptures out of First Kings chapter 5. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to do this moment of silence. It's for our Creator and His Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, and all that they're doing to bring about our deliverance, prophesied deliverance. Oh Lord, we come before Thee at this hour that You have given us this day, praising You and honoring You because of Your position both in heaven and upon the earth, a position in which the Creator Yahweh have given unto Thee. And through Your Spirit and counsel, O Lord, we have awakened. We have awakened to know who we are as a people and who You are as our Savior and our Redeemer. And we're thankful for all that You have done, and we are eagerly searching Your scriptures out that we may be in the right place at the right time upon Your arrival to this planet. Lord, I pray to Thee that You continue to let Your light shine down upon us in spirit and in truth. And we love You, and we seek You daily, O Lord, and there is none else besides Thee to redeem us. We see You in the affairs of the world, excuse me, and we faithfully await Thy deliverance. Peace be unto Thee. Okay. Read the song. Okay. 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 Psalms hiding from me. Okay. Okay. Run backwards. Okay. Okay, you got a song. I'm gonna read Psalm 49. It says, trust in God and not in wealth. It's a song of Korah. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. May my mouth shall speak for wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline mine ear to a parable. I will open my dark sayings upon the heart. Wherefore shall I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can be any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever, that he should still live forever and not see corruption. For he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fool and the brutish person perish and leave their wealth to others. Their inward thoughts is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own name. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their prosperity approve their saying, Selah. Let sheep, like sheep, they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwellings. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me, Selah. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he bless his soul, and men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generations of his fathers, they shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. So that was Psalm 49. It says, trust in God and not in wealth. So verse 20 is the one that kind of stand out to me. It says, man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. So the man without any understanding and not understanding and acknowledging the Creator, when he perished just like an animal, whether he rich or not. Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go to some current events. Okay. Okay, let me see what I need to do. Okay. Okay, for those that don't know, this right here kind of happened today, and it's kind of a sign to things to come. It says Trump woke up and went on a 60 post QAnon fueled social media spree. Don't sound good. When you go back to January 6th, said former President Donald Trump spent Tuesday morning feverishly sharing content from his supporters on his social media platform, Truth Social, posting or reposting more than 60 times since early Tuesday morning, including content from QAnon accounts and the far-right message board for Channel. In the face of a DOJ probe over his post-presidency handling of the classified documents, Trump has sought reassurance from his most loyal followers, including accounts like Patriarch America Alpha Sauce, and Ultra Mega for Life, who post memes looting the former president. Trump using the Truth Social to push the QAnon content isn't new. Alongside jabs at Biden and prominent Democrats, Trump has amplified QAnon promoting accounts at least 70 times since joining the activity using the Truth Social Media Matter senior researcher Alex Chapman tweeted on Monday. Okay, says among his Tuesday morning posting spree, Trump retweeted the text a message from Q, the conspiracy deity claiming to be a high-ranking government official with Q-level security clearance and whose adherents believe Trump will save America from a cabal of Satan-worshiping pedophiles. Trump has thrown red meat at QAnon believers of his base in the past. The signs, okay, read a little more. said the signs and slogans of the conspiracy are not an uncommon sight at Trump's rallies and events. The former president refused to multiply occasions to denounce QAnon, which has been deemed a political terror threat. As recently as earlier this month, Trump posted a video of himself to Truth Social that featured a song affiliated with QAnon. Okay. The flurry of posts and reposts Tuesday morning documents the former president's online stream of consciousness, which extends beyond QAnon into everything from accusations of corruption within the FBI to misappropriated George Orwell quotes to pop jokes about President Biden. QAnon affiliated influencers and forums celebrated the shout out from former president, with some users calling for retribution against his political enemies. Okay. Anybody got any comments on that? Anybody heard anything about that?
No, I had not.
Okay. It don't sound good, dude.
Not at all. He getting started.
Yeah, he getting started.
He only gonna get worse.
So he did 60 posts this morning, Tuesday morning. Is that something? Okay.
As the worst energy crisis in modern times unfolds across the United States, tens of millions of Americans are now experiencing energy poverty. Stress supplies and a growing demand amid this summer's blistering temperatures are leading to the highest prices in a generation. While real wages tumbled 3.6% over the past year, electricity prices have shot up 16%, squeezing consumers. Unfortunately, things are about to get even worse for countless families in the nation, with the U.S. facing a looming crisis of utility shutoffs as a record-breaking number of households fall behind on their power bill payments. Businesses are suffering too, and a series of shutdowns are set to occur as energy costs eat a larger share of business profits and consumer spending dramatically shrinks. We have a lot to discuss in today's video, but before moving on, please give us your support by leaving a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel so you don't miss the most important news. There are currently 20 million households behind on their power bills in the United States as surging electricity prices trigger what is said to be the worst crisis ever in late utility payments, according to Bloomberg, citing data from the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. That means about 1 in 6 American homes are late on their energy bills, and at times scorching hot temperatures are impacting about 50% of the 48 lower states. In the report, they highlighted that electricity prices have jumped significantly since 2020 after almost a decade of stagnation. The sharp increases resulted in billions of dollars in overdue power bills. At the moment, electricity inflation is being fueled by the skyrocketing costs of fossil fuels such as natural gas, coal, and petroleum. Natural gas is responsible for powering up nearly 40% of the U.S. electric grid. On Tuesday, natural gas prices soared to the highest level since 2008. Since June 2020, natural gas is up a staggering 525%. Meanwhile, electricity continues to rise to a blistering 30% year on year. Consequently, more and more people are scrambling to keep up with the rising costs. That's why utility shutoffs have become more common all around the nation, with lower-income households now thousands of dollars behind on their power bills. Jean-Sue, a senior attorney at the Center for Biological Diversity, which tracks utility disconnections across the country, warned that a tsunami of shutoffs is imminent, given that the highest inflation in 40 years is financially devastating the working poor. At this point, millions of Americans are being pushed closer to disaster, facing the prospect of being left without power amid dangerously hot temperatures. According to Bloomberg, Adrienne Neese is one of those struggling Americans who is more than $3,000 behind on utility bills. Last month, she received a final notice from power company Xcel Energy Inc., who turned off the electricity to her studio apartment in Minneapolis as temperatures approached near triple digits. He said it's virtually impossible to save money for utility expenses that have doubled over the past year, considering that food, shelter, and gas prices have also climbed. Her low-paying job as a house cleaner has left her in energy poverty. She stressed, "I just don't understand how electricity can be so high." Several power companies have reported a surge in non-payment customers. In California, PG&E Corporation revealed that there has been a 40% spike in the number of residential customers behind on payments since February 2020. In New Jersey, the Public Service Enterprise Group exposed that the number of customers at least 90 days late has risen 30% since March. The added data shows that as of August 20th, U.S. households owed $16 billion in late energy bills. That is double the pre-pandemic total. The association also noted that the average overdue balance has jumped by 97% since 2019 to $792. The bills just aren't affordable, says Mark Wolf, NIADA's executive director. People on the bottom, they can't pay their electricity bills. In July, the average price of electricity in America hit a record high, $0.166 per kilowatt hour. That is a 4% jump from the prior month and up 16% from a year ago, the Commerce Department reported. Natural gas is the largest single source of electricity generation in the U.S., accounting for about 38% of all power generated last year, the Energy Information Administration said. Prices for natural gas have been soaring worldwide following the Ukraine crisis. Russia is a major supplier of natural gas to Europe, but the Kremlin decided to retaliate against Western sanctions by halting plans to open a key new pipeline and disrupting Russian exports to Europe. In response, the U.S. government have boosted gas exports to European allies, constraining domestic supply and raising prices at home in the United States. Right now, a third of households are finding it difficult to afford the energy they need to heat and to cool their homes, and to provide lighting and cooking. All across the country, low-income families are spending a larger percentage of their annual income, 3 times more on average, on energy costs than non-low-income families. At the same time, inflation is sending the prices of groceries and everyday necessities through the roof, and many households have had to make tough choices about whether to pay utility bills or put food on the table.
Okay, any comments on that?
The electric bills are truly growing, going up along with, all the other bills too. I don't see no break for us no
Right.
time soon.
Is there some? Yeah. We go to something right here that I thought was pretty interesting because I mean I already talked about it.
Brother Leonard, we can't hear anything. Brother Leonard, if you can hear me, we can't hear anything.
Continue.
Can you hear now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay.
But the video is not playing, so I don't know. Okay.
To remain submerged. In the northwest of the country, thousands of people fled their homes after rivers in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province burst their banks, causing powerful flash floods. Rising floodwaters in the province's Swat Valley also caused a luxury hotel to collapse. A key bridge near the town of Charsada was swept away after relentless downpour submerged parts of the region. Thousands of residents had to flee the homes after floodwaters gushed into their houses.
Yes.
Hey, this is Gaston with Rough Country and the ongoing
Earlier, our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik spoke to some key officials in the region who gave us latest updates on this flood situation in the area.
This is a humanitarian problem, crisis, and it has affected millions of people and all across, up to Sindh. So Balochistan is in a bad shape, Sindh is in a bad shape, parts of Punjab, even Gilgit-Baltistan. So we have a crisis all over the country. And this is a major crisis which this government is facing. So it has to be in collaboration with both the provinces and the federal government. They have to collaborate with each other, and only then can we really face this issue.
There is no casualty so far reported, and because people have been evacuated timely, some people are not, because people are not aware of the situation, so some people are not helping and they are not cooperating with us. But Alhamdulillah, administration has taken the situation very carefully.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on Saturday visited flood-hit areas of the Sindh province and appealed to people to help the victims in the poor areas. He also announced free medical treatments and relief worth about $113 to each household affected by the floods.
कल भी मैंने अपील की थी, आज पर मैं अपील करूंगा साहिब हैसियत लोगों को, पंजाब के, सिंध के, बलूचिस्तान के, KPK के, कि वो आगे बढ़ें.
Okay, we had a conversation probably maybe a year ago or so ago, when they had the shalom, bro. They had they had the Arab Spring. I don't know if you remember that. They called it the summer of chaos, when they had all those Arab Spring countries started revolting. Well, when you understand who Esau is and how Esau and he taking our land, and he posing as the Israelites over there in the land of Israel, where he had in Malachi, he told the Most High that he was gonna Most High told him that he said he's gonna return, and he said he's gonna return and and build up the desert places. Well, he came back in 1948, but they got a plan in place. They want to rule the world for 1,000 years from Jerusalem. But the trick to it is, when you understand and keeping up with the events, they already have everything they need to rebuild the temple. A lot of people saying that they already started rebuilding it. You know, they came out of nowhere a couple of about last year, and they did that. They did their dedication, they did their sacrifices. But the thing is, they want to rule Jerusalem. They want to rule the world from the original land that the Most High gave Israel, which is from Goshen, from the river Egypt all the way to not the land that they got now. They want to from the original location, which include having to take over Pakistan and all those countries within that region. So it's kind of and most of those countries are they nuclear countries. They got nuclear weapons, so they just can't come in and just take them over. So they have to find some kind of way on a slick level how to take them over. And so it's kind of ironic to me that all this flooding going on, half of Pakistan about to be flooded out. And Pakistan is one of the larger countries, major countries in that region that they need to subdue in order to carry out their goals that they want of reclaiming land, the original land that was given to Abraham in Genesis 14 and 15. Yeah. So when I see this right here, you know, it kind of take me for a loop. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, yeah, so we're gonna go to a little need to know information. I thought this is pretty interesting also.
For decades, world trade has been dominated by the dollar.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world.
The SWIFT system, that actually became weaponized by the U.S.
The Monetary Authority of Singapore and the People's Bank of China have renewed the bilateral currency swap arrangement.
Saudi Arabia is in discussions with China to price some of its oil sales in yuan.
But as ties with Washington continue to be strained, Beijing and Moscow are diversifying.
China and Russia had taken another step closer towards dumping the dollar and agreed to trade in their respective national currencies, the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan.
Hi everybody. The US dollar has been the most powerful currency in the world for 80 long years. And like we saw in the previous episodes, this reserve currency status gives the United States such unprecedented power over the world economy that it can cripple the economy of any country within a fortnight. And because of this power, it has even dominated giant players like Russia and China. But you know what, guys? This is where China and Russia have actually come up with a master plan to kill the dollar dominance in the world. And if you look at the past 10 years data, you will see that it's actually working out quite well. In 1999, USD had 71% market share among the global reserve currencies, but in the past 10 years, it has dropped to less than 59%. And in the next 10 years, if this strategy of China and Russia works out, we might see the rise of a new reserve currency in the form of Chinese yuan. So the question is, what is this master plan of China and Russia to kill the dollar dominance in the world? How do they plan to dethrone US from the superpower status of the world? And lastly, what are the challenges that China and Russia will face in this currency wars of the world? This video is brought to you by Kuku FM, but more on this at the end of the video. To understand this China-Russia strategy, we first have to understand why is the US dollar so powerful and why does it have almost a monopoly status among the reserve currencies of the world. And if you watched our dollar superpower episode and if you remember this concept, please skip to this timestamp. If you don't, here's a quick and short explanation of the same. Firstly, dollar served as a reserve currency of trust, whereby in 1994, US said if you have dollars, we would exchange its value in gold at $35 per ounce. So now, two countries that may or may not trust each other could do trade with each other without trouble. So this way, when Indonesia got $1 million from Pakistan, even if Indonesia did not trust Pakistan, they know for sure that the $1 million that they got could be exchanged for gold with the US. So it was definitely worthy. Otherwise, if they do trade with Pakistan in Pakistani rupees, today 10,000 Pakistani rupees might be worthy of buying 1 gram of gold. But the next week itself, if Pakistan prints more money and declares that 20,000 Pakistani rupee will buy you 1 gram of gold, do you realize what would happen? The entire value of trade with Indonesia would actually collapse. Moreover, if Indonesia wants to use Pakistani rupees, then if other countries do not trust Pakistan's economy, then that money again could not be used for trade. But if the same transaction happened in dollars, the United States guaranteed the value of dollars with gold. So you could trade with any country with the US dollars and be rest assured that it could be used to trade with any other country to buy any other commodity. But in 1971, Richard Nixon came out of nowhere and ended this gold standard where everyone was free to choose any currency to trade.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
But even then, almost all countries stuck to the dollar. Why? Because dollar was the only currency that could buy you oil from the Saudis. And why is that? Because in 1945, the US President Franklin Roosevelt made an agreement of the century with the Saudi king, whereby the US guaranteed the security of Saudi Arabia, and in exchange, the Saudi king agreed to sell oil in US dollars. So if you wanted to buy oil, you needed to have US dollars. This is the second reason for the dominance of the dollar, and that is the power to purchase oil. And these two superpowers of trust and oil gave the US the third superpower through the SWIFT network. And how does the SWIFT network work? Through the US dollar stored in US bank accounts. So if an Indian trader wanted to make a transaction to the Sri Lankan trader, this system would have an Indian trader, an Indian bank, an American bank 1, American bank 2, foreign bank, and foreign trader. The highlight over here being both Indian and Sri Lankan banks will have an account in the American bank where it has its money stored in dollars. So if Reliance wants to import minerals worth 1 crore rupees from Sri Lanka, they would give the Indian bank 1 crore Indian rupees and ask them to pay the same amount in dollars to the Sri Lankan trader's account. So now that Indian bank has 1 crore rupees in its Indian account, it would send a message to its dollar account in America to send 1 crore worth of dollars to the Sri Lankan bank's dollar account in the US. In this case, assuming 80 rupees to the dollar to be exchange rate, $125,000 would be transferred from the Indian account in the US to the Sri Lankan account in the US. And now that the Sri Lankan bank has $125,000 in the US account, countries in the world who owe a collective debt of $385 billion to China. And many of these countries have taken so much debt from China that they cannot afford to pay it back to China. And we saw this very, very clearly with both Pakistan and Sri Lanka, right? And this is where China's strategic move comes in. And now that China has a leverage over these countries, experts say that China would now ask these countries to take and pay back loans in yuan. And in exchange, China could incentivize the scheme by giving them a 1% discount on their interest. Now, do you realize if Pakistan owes $24.7 billion in debt to China, considering its economic crisis right now, a 1% discount on a $24.7 billion in debt is a big, big deal for Pakistan. In fact, since the inception of the BRI initiative, China has already issued 14% of all its loans in its own currency without depending on the dollar. And guess what? In 2018, the Central Bank of Pakistan had already agreed to conduct their bilateral trade with China in yuan. And even other countries like Myanmar, Cambodia, and Russia are doing the same now. On top of that, China is now the largest trade partner with 25 BRI participating countries. So again, the leverage of trade for China is very, very strong. So you see, with the combination of both trade and debt, China could pressurize these countries to use yuan over the dollar. So this way, over time, China could pull the strings of 165 nations and could drastically increase the circulation of yuan. Now the question over here is, all these countries are mostly poor countries, right? So how would China and Russia get rich countries like England and South Korea to skip the dollar? Well, firstly, Russia is strongly supporting China and has already turned the Chinese yuan into their reserve currency. So this is a major, major move. And as far as other countries are concerned, they have something called bilateral currency swap agreement. And this is something that even India is pursuing very, very strategically with its ally countries. So the question is, what is the bilateral currency swap agreement and how does it actually work in international trade? As usual, let's try to understand this using a story. Let's say China and UK sign a bilateral currency swap agreement of 5 years for a value of $1 million. What this means is that China will sell $1 million worth of yuan to UK and UK will sell $1 million worth of pounds to China. So after conversion, China will give 6.842 million yuan to UK and UK will give China 847,250 pounds. And they will agree upon the exchange rate to be 8.07. So for 5 years, Chinese central bank can sell these pounds and get US dollars, or it can lend these pounds to domestic bank and companies to settle their trade. Similarly, the Bank of England can do the same with yuan. So now, if an English businessman wants to buy 1 million yuan worth of goods from China, if he went by the conventional means, what would he have to do? He would have to pay in pounds to the English bank, which will then convert the sum to dollars, then transfer the dollars to the US bank account of China, and then the Chinese bank will transfer the converted sum of yuan to the Chinese businessman. This will incur both a lot of time and a lot of cost. But now, the English businessman would simply borrow 1 million yuan from the Bank of England and directly pay the Chinese bank account in England. And as soon as this money is transferred in the Chinese bank account in England, the Chinese bank in China would transfer 1 million yuan to the Chinese businessman. And the same thing could be done vice versa when a Chinese businessman wants to buy something from UK. So if you see, two big players can now do international trade without depending on the US dollar. This is how the currency swap agreement works. And after 5 years, both the central banks of UK and China will pay their respective currencies back at the agreed exchange rate of 8.07. So this way, both countries get three major advantages. Number one, both countries can eliminate their exchange risk. Number two, both countries can use this currency to exchange it for dollars if needed. And thirdly, businesses in both countries can carry out trade more economically. So the business relationship between both the countries gets better and better with time. And last and most importantly, the dependency on US dollar decreases by a large extent. And guess what? Beijing has signed more than 3 trillion yuan worth of bilateral currency swap deals with more than 40 countries across the world. And this includes 400 billion yuan each with Hong Kong and South Korea, 350 billion yuan each with Bank of England and the European Central Bank, 300 billion yuan with Singapore, and 150 billion yuan with Russia. And cherry on the cake, Since China is the world's largest manufacturer, with almost 20% of the entire world's manufacturing happening in China, they could further leverage this in order to push the companies to pay in yuan instead of the US dollars. And guess what? Now, Saudi Arabia is considering selling oil in yuan, which means if Saudi Arabia starts selling oil in yuan, a lot of countries would rush to buy yuan. And again, like we saw in the case with excess forex being invested in US bonds, the excess yuan would then be invested in Chinese bonds, making the Chinese economy more and more powerful. This is
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay, keeping my eye on the Executive Order 1406. Okay. Can you say more? Okay, yeah. Anybody got any comments on that? Okay, yeah. So what I'm showing you that for because when you listen to what the guy was saying is the dollar is, you know, they cutting the bottom off Monday. Dollar's going, it's going and going, it's going, you know, it's going fast. And we already see what's happening with our economy as far as inflation and all that. Like I was saying before, you gotta, I mean, you know, I'm showing you all this stuff every chance I get for a reason. Light a fire on me. Okay. I'm opening up for some Q&A. Anybody got any comments? I mean, questions or comments about anything that we talked about they want to bring up and discuss? Okay, I got a video right here I'm gonna play.
Administration is preparing to ask Congress to approve a new $1.1 billion arms sale to Taiwan. The package reportedly includes 60 anti-ship missiles, 100 air-to-air missiles. This comes after 2 U.S. warships sailed through the Taiwan Strait Sunday for the first time since House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan earlier this month. China condemned the visit and launched major military drills near Taiwan. Meanwhile, President Biden announced $3 billion in more military aid for Ukraine last week, including money for missiles, artillery rounds, and drones to help Ukrainian forces fight Russia. We begin today's show looking at U.S. policy on Russia and China. We're joined by the economist Jeffrey Sachs, director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. He's president of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. He served as advisor to 3 UN secretaries general. His latest article is headlined, "The West's False Narrative About Russia and China." He begins the article by writing, quote, "The world is on the edge of nuclear catastrophe in no small part because of the failure of Western political leaders to be forthright about the causes of the escalating global conflicts. The relentless Western narrative that the West is noble while Russia and China are evil is simple-minded and extraordinarily dangerous," Jeffrey Sachs writes. Jeffrey Sachs, welcome to Democracy Now! Why don't you take it from there?
Good to be with you.
What is the story that people in the West and around the world should understand about what's happening right now with these conflicts with Russia and Ukraine, and with China?
The main point, Amy, is that we are not using diplomacy. We are using weaponry. This sale now announced to Taiwan that you've been discussing this morning is just another case in point. This does not make Taiwan safer. This does not make the world safer. It certainly doesn't make the United States safer. This goes back a long way. I think it's useful to start 30 years ago. The Soviet Union ended, and some American leaders got it into their head that there was now what they called the unipolar world, that the U.S. was the sole superpower, and we could run the show. The results have been disastrous. We have had now 3 decades of militarization of American foreign policy. A new database that Tufts is maintaining has just shown that there have been more than 100 military interventions by the United States since 1991. It's really unbelievable. And I have seen in my own experience over the last 30 years, working extensively in Russia, in Central Europe, in China, and in other parts of the world, how the US approach is a military first and often a military only approach. We arm who we want. We call for NATO enlargement no matter what other countries say may be harmful to their security interests. We brush aside anyone else's security interests. And when they complain, we ship more armaments to our allies in that region. We go to war when we want, where we want, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq or the covert war against Assad in Syria, which is even today not properly understood by the American people, or the war in Libya. And we say, we're peace-loving. What's wrong with Russia and China? They are so warlike. They're out to undermine the world. And we end up in terrible confrontations. The war in Ukraine, just to finish the introductory view, could have been avoided and should have been avoided through diplomacy. What President Putin of Russia was saying for years was, do not expand NATO into the Black Sea, not to Ukraine, much less to Georgia, which if people look on the map, straight across to the eastern edge of the Black Sea. Russia said, this will surround us. This will jeopardize our security. Let us have diplomacy. The United States rejected all diplomacy. I tried to contact the White House at the end of 2021. In fact, I did contact the White House and said, there will be war unless the U.S. enters diplomatic talks with President Putin over this question of NATO enlargement. I was told the U.S. will never do that. That is off the table. And it was off the table. Now we have a war that's extraordinarily dangerous, and we are taking exactly the same tactics in East Asia that led to the war in Ukraine. We're organizing alliances, building up weaponry, trash talking China, having Speaker Pelosi fly to Taiwan when the Chinese government said, please lower the temperature, lower the tensions. We say, no, we do what we want, and now send more arms. This is a recipe for yet another war. And to my mind, it's terrifying. We are at the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I've studied all my life, and I've written a book about the aftermath. We are driving to the precipice, and we are filled with our enthusiasm as we do so, and it's just unaccountably dangerous and wrong-headed, the whole approach of U.S. foreign policy, and it's bipartisan.
Jeffrey Sachs, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that you mentioned in a recent article that was published in Consortium News was this insistence of the United States, dragging Europe along as well, in maintaining hegemony throughout the world at a time when the economic power of the West is declining. You mentioned, for instance, that the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, represent more than 40% of the world's population and have a greater GDP than the G7 nations, yet their interests and their concerns are pretty much dismissed, or in the case, obviously, of Russia and China, portrayed to the American people as the aggressors, as the authoritarians, as the ones that are creating turmoil in the world. I'm wondering if you could expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And directing us to that is extremely important. The disproportionate power of the Western world, and especially the Anglo-Saxon world, which started with the British Empire and now the United States, is about 250 years old. So a short period in world history. It happened for a lot of very interesting reasons that the Industrial Revolution came to England first. The steam engine was invented there. That's probably the single most important invention of modern history. Britain became militarily dominant in the 19th century, like the United States was in the second half of the 20th century. Britain ran the show. Britain had the empire on which the sun never set. And the West, meaning the United States and Western Europe, now meaning the US and the European Union, the UK, Canada, Japan, in other words, the G7, the European Union together, is a small part of the world population, perhaps now roughly 10%, a little bit more, maybe 12.5% if you add in Japan to Western Europe and the US. But the mindset is we run the world. And that was the way it was for 200 years in this industrial age. But times have changed. And really, since the 1950s, the rest of the world, when it gained independence from European imperialism, started to educate its populations, started to adopt and adapt and innovate technologies. And lo and behold, a small sliver of the world really didn't run the world or didn't have a monopoly on wisdom or knowledge or science or technology. And this is wonderful. The knowledge and possibility of decent lives is spreading throughout the whole world. But in the United States, there's a resentment to this, a deep resentment. I think there's also a tremendous historical ignorance because I think a lot of US leaders have no clue as to modern history, but they resent China's rise. That is an affront to the United States. How dare China rise? This is our world. This is our century. And so starting around 2014, I saw step by step, I watched it with intense detail because it's my daily activity, how the United States recast China, not as a country that was recovering from a century and a half of great difficulty, but rather as an enemy. And we consciously, as a matter of American foreign policy, started to say we need to contain China. China's rise is no longer in our interest, as if the United States is to determine whether China is prosperous or not. The Chinese are not naive. In fact, they're extraordinarily sophisticated. They watched all of this exactly the same way that I did. I know the authors of the US texts. They are my colleagues at Harvard or other places. I was shocked when this kind of containment idea started to be applied. But the basic point is the West has led the world for a brief period, 250 years, but feel that's our right. This is a Western world. We are the G7. We get to determine who writes the rules of the game. Indeed, Obama, a good guy on the spectrum of what we have in foreign policy, said, let's write the rules of trade for Asia, but not have China write any of those rules. The U.S. will write the rules. This is an incredibly naive and dangerous and outmoded way to understand the world. We in the United States are 4.2% of the world's population. We do not run the world. We are not world leader. We are a country of 4.2% of the people in a big, diverse world, and we should learn to get along.
Okay. Any comments on that? Any comments on that? Yeah, so if you want to watch that, it's Jeffrey Sachs, U.S. policies stroking tensions with Russia and China. So it's going, according to what he's talking about, we can see it's going right along with prophecy, because every move they make, it seems like it's the wrong move. You know, it's either that or, you know, they're not getting the memo, because they just egging on more and more drama, bringing more and more drama. Like he said, they aggravated and they brought about that what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and they constantly sending weaponry to Ukraine, and now they just provoked China, and now they're sending weapons to Taiwan. It's almost as if everything they're doing is intentional. They're trying to kick off some kind of major world war or something. Right. So yeah, I was okay. Right. So yeah, I was trying to figure out what it was. Yeah, it's that digital dollar. Right. Okay. They're trying to get ahead of the game because they know they see what Russia and China doing. Right. So nobody have any comments on that? Okay. Yeah. So let's go into. I'm gonna read out of the book of Kings on chapter 5. I read chapters 1 through 4 over the weekend, and I'm gonna read chapter 5 tonight. Then I got another little something I wanted to talk about. Some information I wanted to share, some new information. Okay, I'm in 2 Kings. Okay. 1 Kings, my bad. 1 Kings, chapter 5. Okay. It says, this is Solomon's, let me see. Okay. Chapter 5 says, Solomon's agreement with King Hiram. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. For Hiram was ever a lover of David. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that David, my father, could not build a house unto the name of the Lord, his God, for the walls which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurring. And behold, I propose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne, in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. Now therefore command thou that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Sidonians. And it came to pass, when Hiram heard the word of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly, and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, which hath given unto David the wise son over his great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which thou sentest to me, for I will do all thy desires concerning timber and cedar, and concerning timber of fir. My servant shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea in floats into the place that thou should appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there, and thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in the giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, and he promised him as he had promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. And King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month. But of course, a month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. And Adoram was over the levy. And Solomon had 10,000 that bore burdens, and 80,000 hewers in the mountains, besides the chief of Solomon's officers, which were over the work, 3,300, which ruled over the people that wrought in the work. And the king commanded, and they brought great stones, costly stones, and huge stones to lay the foundation of the house. And Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders did hew them, and the stone squares. So they prepared timber and stone to build a house. Okay. So that was chapter 5. I'm gonna read one more chapter 6. Any comments on chapter 5? Okay. So just give you a little rundown on chapter 5. The Most High, the Lord of hosts, had already prophesied that David wasn't going to build him a house, that he was going to raise up his son after him and build a house. And that's what we see manifesting itself in 1 Kings chapter 5. Now I'm in chapter 6. Solomon builds the temple. And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the fourth year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziph, which is the second month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof was 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. And the porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits, was the length thereof, according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth thereof before the house. And for the house he made windows of narrow lights, and against the walls of the house he built chambers round about, against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle, and made chambers round about. The nethermost chambers were 5 cubits broad, and the middles were 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For without in the wall of the house he made narrow or rest round about, that the beams should not be fastened in the walls of the house. And the house, when it was in building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was in building. The door for the middle of the chamber was on its right side of the house, and they went up the windy stairs into the middle chamber, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house, finished it, and covered the house with beams and boards of cedar, and then he built chambers against all the house, 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timber of cedar. And the word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, concerning this house which thou art in building, if thou wilt walk in my statutes, execute my judgment, keep all my commandments, to walk in them, then will I perform my word with thee, which I spake unto David thy father. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it, and he built the walls of the house within the boards of cedar, both the floor of the house and the walls of the ceiling, and he covered them on the inside, on the inside with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of fir. And he built 20 cubits on the side of the house, both the floor and the walls with boards of cedar. He even built them for it within, even for the oracle, even for the most holy place. And the house, that is, the temple before it, was 40 cubits long. And the cedar of the house within was carved with knots and open flowers, all with cedar. There was no stone seen. And the oracles he prepared in the house within to set there the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And the oracles in the foremost were 20 cubits in length, and 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits in the height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and so covered the altar, which was of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within pure gold, and he made the partitions by the chains of gold before the oracle, and he overlaid it with gold. And the whole house he overlaid with gold until he had finished all the house. Also the whole altar that was by the oracle he overlaid with gold. And within the oracle he made 2 cherubim of olive trees, each 10 cubits high. And 5 cubits was one wing of the cherubim, and 5 cubits was the other wing of the cherubim, from the uttermost part of the one wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. And the other cherubim was 10 cubits. Both of the cherubims were one measure and one size, and the height of one cherubim was 10 cubits, and so was it of the other cherub. And he set the cherub within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubim, so that the wings of the cherubim, one touched the other, one touched one wall, and the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold, and he carved all the walls of the house round about, and carved figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers within and without. And the floor of the house he overlaid with gold within and without. And for the inner end of the oracle he made doors of olive trees and lintel, and some posts were at the fifth part of the wall. The 2 doors also were of olive trees, and he carved open them, and he carved upon them carvings of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold, and spread gold upon the cherubim and upon the palm trees. So also made he for the doors the temple posts of the olive trees, a full part of the wall. And the 2 doors were of fir tree, and the 2 leaves of one door were folded, and the 2 leaves of the other door were folded. And he carved therein cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and covered them with gold fitted upon the carved work. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of huge stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid in the month of Ziph. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished, throughout all the parts thereof, and according to all the fashion of it, so was he 7 years in building it. So that was 2 Kings chapter 6. So we see right here that the whole house, everything that was in it was overlaid with gold. So you can imagine what that looked like. But anyway, what I want to shine a light on before I move on was 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 34. This is the doors of the temple to the house, Lord's house. And the two doors were of fir trees, and two leaves of one door were folding, and the two leaves of the other door were folding. So you say, why am I showing you this? So you go to Isaiah. Go to Isaiah chapter 45. Okay. In chapter 45. And it says, starting in, this is a prophecy concerning Cyrus. And it says, thus says this chapter 45, verse 1 of Isaiah. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings. And here you go, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. That's the two gates I just read. I just showed you. They describing it. 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 34. Read it again. 1 Kings 6, verse 34. And the two doors were of a fir tree, and two leaves of one door were folded, and two leaves of the other door were folded. And so my point of showing this is, you got people that try to slide their way out of this, but he says right here, verse 1, 45 and 1, thus says the Lord, this is the Lord talking, to his anointed Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be open. So Cyrus came and conquered everybody. Cyrus was the one prophesied 500 years before that he was going to deliver the Israelites out of Babylon. So that's what I mean by going back to Daniel 9:25 when it says a commandment is going to go forth to restore and build Jerusalem. And then when you go to Ezra chapter 1, you see it. Chapter 1 is the prophecy being fulfilled of Cyrus. In chapter 45 of Isaiah, it says, now in the first year of Cyrus, this is Ezra chapter 1, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it in writing, saying, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven, have given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Said he was going to loose the loins of kings. So he says, have given me the kingdoms of the earth, and he have charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judea. And we see that house got two-leaved gates on it. So like I said before, you can try to get out of it, but you can't get out of it. Yeah. Any comments? Any comments on that? Okay, yeah. So like I was saying before we go, I was gonna shine a light on this video. Just gonna show a little bit of it. I'll give you the name of it.
Okay, now we're going to do one about Serapis and its connections. And I'm going to show you a disconnect of reality versus what's even taught, even in a modern day, about this, and whenever it starts to form about as a religious point. Okay, and it's talked about as being and coming prominent in the Ptolemaic dynasties, and in most situations say it invented at that point. We will show that that's a little different to it, for I've shown videos before where this connects to a lot of religions, like the point of Dionysus and to the worship of Python and the ancient temple of Apollo and a few other places and temples that actually predate that point. So it doesn't make any sense that the narrative gets pushed, but let's try to dig through that as we see a lot more symbology and what people have said about this. Now, looking at this picture, the first thing you'd notice is that it definitely has a little bit of a Jesus look to it. And if you thought about it, if you were to shave it, it would look a lot like the Statue of Liberty. It has that symbol on top of it, and a lot of people have correlated to Sabel or Tanit and the goddess and the light bringer, which would connect it to Lucifer in some weird ways, but that there would be a candle or incense perhaps put in that, or a cuppet that would hold a certain amount of grain. And so it starts connecting all types of gods to the same type of rebirth and renewal that's seen from Osiris in Egypt, but also in every Proto-Indo-European cult that we can find across through India, all the way to Ireland and all the people in between. Also, you can notice that this is a zodiac disc here, and it's surrounded by a snake, but it's not totally encompassing it. For quite often, it's totally encompassing it, and the snake is biting his own tail, and there's symbology to that I've talked about, or he goes all the way around it. In other depictions of something that looks exactly like this, you see an omphalos or an egg, and he's wrapped up with a snake. Or you'll see a person looking like this man here, who's also wrapped up with a snake, like the snake on the top of the caduceus, right? And that has connotations to, I guess, the Bible, where they talk about brazen serpents and so on. But let's get off into this a little more. What we're looking at here, too, as far as the zodiac goes, is processions of time. And amazingly, or oddly, for some reason, the date that's pinpointed above his head seems to be a date that's about 2,000 years from now. For if we look two back, that's at Aquarius, and right now we have just come out of Pisces, and so we're about my point, or just barely into the age of Aquarius. In fact, when I was a kid, there was the hippie song, "It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius," fifth dimension. Does anybody remember that? It's weird too. It talks about alignments of planets and all these weird things that are going to happen, and just kind of sung out as a ding dong dun. And there's I've done a whole video about that, but let's look into this further. Well, so let's give some type of declamation here, just some knowledge here. For this is a Jesus type character and a resurrecting God like Osiris and everything, and it has to do with sacred bull worship and sacrificing of cows, like in the Bible and so on. And boy, there's a lot to this, but whenever you look at Pisces, this is the age of Jesus. And it went for about 2,000 years, and now we're in Aquarius. And Jesus is a fisher of men, and so on. It has to do with fish and multiplying fish at a wedding and all these things and iconography that are shown there. If we look at the age before this, there's a declamation, actually pretty much at the point here, where going from bull worship, they started sacrificing goats and sheep and things along that nature, and you can see the change of it. But then previously to that point, there is the twins of Gemini and how these people had separated. Although in the Noah story, it gives you a 3-type separation, showing you 3 different people, because there's one that's kind of not talked about so much. But they're all 3 of these Caucasian primordial civilizations that spread out from there, and that is up near the Caucasus Mountains, even ironically. But man, I could sit and go an hour on this picture, but I don't want to anymore. Let's get into what they say. Serapis, god of fertility and the afterlife that united Greeks and Egyptians. See if I can get in just a hair more on this. Does that look a little better? That should fit well. So it unites the Greeks and Egyptians. Serapis, also called Serapis, was a deity invented by the Ptolemies and was meant to bridge the gap between their Egyptian and Greek subjects. The Ptolemies were one of the successors of Alexander the Great. Well, it's actually what he had put into place. And of course, it seems like they poisoned him, and then the generals took over and everything. Maybe it tells you a tale that maybe you shouldn't push your troops farther than what you had originally said, but he was trying to capture the known world in the area that the Persians had, all of the ancient Aryan lands of that area and so on, and pretty much stopped at that point. But then after that, that's whenever the event happened. And this follows after this, and the Seleucid dynasties and so on like that. So let's look into this more. The Ptolemies were one of the successors of Alexander the Great and ruler over Egypt until he was conquered by the Romans in 30 BC. And that's an odd connection with timing too. And then what led out of that has other connections. And while this was still picked up, but in a different way, almost thrown away, but then secreted, more like covered up and pulled back as a different type of religion, or a new type of religion in the area. It leads to Jesus and things. And think about that as I talk about this. For as the Ptolemies were a foreign dynasty somewhat, and even though Alexander was seen as a savior whenever he came in and welcomed into Egypt and a lot of the places that he went, for he was freeing them back up. They had both Greek and Egyptian subjects, though, because they're owning Greece. And in fact, they even pulled down into there, and the Ptolemaic dynasties led to Cleopatra and so on. So they needed to take measures to solidify their rule somehow. And one of these was the invention of the Greco-Egyptian deity Serapis. And we all know about the story in the Bibles where Caesar wanted to put up his statue and they weren't going to have it, and it caused a revolt. Things like that happened and so on. But there's another story that goes along with this. And this, again, is that typology of echoing, where there was something that happened also during the Hyksos reign that actually does equate quite well, or as close as it can be for anybody, to the actual Exodus of the Bible. But that's another story. So looking at names as simple as this, you can
Yeah, so notice that timeline when they said the times that, notice that it's all what he's saying. It ties right in with scripture. He said that he existed when they created this God. It's already a fact they created it, but when they created it, it was during the time of the Greeks, and all the way up to 30 AD. That's the same time coming into the New Testament. And then he also mentioned he came on the scene from he was worshipped from India all the way to Italy, which is, it's put right there. Same thing, same time frame with JC. You understand what's going on. So all during the time Ptolemy created it, when you go to First Maccabees, you'll see the Greeks ruled for a long time, a lot longer than a lot of people even know. And then, so he was created during the time of the Greek kingdom. At the end of the Greek kingdom, that's when Ptolemy came and put this image in the temple and caused all the ruckus with the Jews in First Maccabees. So it's the same deity or the same idol that was the Romans used at the Council of Nicaea, and then he increased with power. Same deity, and not only that, Osiris is God of the underworld, the netherworld, and that's where he is, God of the underworld. When JC died, that's where he went, to the netherworld, 3 days and 3 nights. You don't see none of the other prophets, none of them going to the netherworld. And like he said, he's the purpose that they created him was to bridge the gap between the Egyptians and the Greeks. So they took characteristics from the Greek god and characteristics from the Egyptian god, more so from the Egyptian god. And they created him. And that's what brought kind of leveled out the playing field for the Greeks. who had came into the Egyptian land and conquered them, trying to ease the tension. Okay, so that was you want to watch it. It was Serapis, Osiris, Apis, Bull, Jesus, Osiris, 2019 Egyptian Caucasian. Okay. So with that being said, anybody have any comments on anything before we get up out of here? Everybody good?
Yes, and I just want to say this information that you share with us, right, concerning Serapis, is open to any and everybody, right? So just like we are learning about these videos, it seems as though certain ones, excuse me, seems not to want to acknowledge these type of videos. It's like they just ignore the facts that are actually out there.
Right, exactly. That's to be understood because it's been prophesied that they was going to do that.
Right, and it's not us that's making the videos. It's them that's making the videos. That's bringing the truth out to them, and they still, choose to just sort of like look over it.
Right, exactly. Like I said, act as if they never heard it.
Right, exactly.
Right.
They want to connect the dots with what they want to connect the dots to.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. So, but I mean, it was prophesied. I can't really recall the verse, but when we come back on Thursday for the women's class, I'll mention that verse because it's word for word, exactly everything that's happening. You see that when you go back to the prophet, I think the prophet was Ezekiel, and they heard about Ezekiel, and they heard how skilled he was in the law and all that, and they wanted to hear what he had to say, but they wouldn't do what he said. And the Most High told them that they are asking about you in the housetops and in the temple everywhere. They talking about you and asking about you and want to hear you and want to stand before you, but they ain't gonna do what you tell them. Because what you telling them is what I told you to tell them, and they don't want to do that. They want to do everything else, but they want to hear what you got to say, and that's as far as they go, in one ear and out the other one. But he said that everything you done said, when it come to pass, then they gonna know who you are, what you and that I had sent you. But right now they're twiddling their thumbs. They think it's some kind of fashion show. Right. Okay. So I'll read that. I'm gonna find that verses because his word it's like it's word for word when he said it, and so many things in the scriptures that if you're not tuned in to what's going on with it, the scriptures ain't gonna speak to you. But once you find out what's really going on, then the scriptures come alive more and more clear. It's like it's just happened yesterday. Okay, so everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. Shalom. I'll see everybody tomorrow on Clubhouse at 8 o'clock for our Clubhouse room. Shalom.